Hi, I'm Joe Griffith, and today's guest is business coach John Nieuwenburg. John Nieuwenburg is an award-winning business coach who has worked with hundreds of clients. There are almost as many different ways of delivering business coaching as there are business coaches. John coaches in three primary areas. One is business, getting things done using proven tools, strategies, and techniques to grow your business. Another is personal growth, working with you in areas such as decision-making, leadership, delegation, and time management skills. Accountability, John will help you stay accountable for the results you've chosen that up until now may have been just a dream. So welcome, John. How are you?
I'm doing really well, especially after that introduction. Thanks a lot, Joe.
No problem. So I have a bit of a lead in for our topic. So this is a little bit that I got from the CBC. And it says that 3/4 of all small business owners plan to exit their business in the next decade. And this is according to I guess it was a survey that was done by the Canadian Federation of Independent Business. They said the vast majority of those businesses, like a crazy amount, like 85% will, result in a desire to retire, as they say. So today's topic really is going to just be, what to consider when developing an exit strategy for your business. And of course, since we have you here, John, who's an expert in this stuff, so my question is, what does a business owner need to consider before putting their company on the market?
Yeah, so the short version of the answer to that question is that you need to take a look at your business through the eyes of the buyer. And their lens through which they're going to be viewing your business is probably different than the way that you've been thinking about it. So the primary thing they're thinking about is how, I'm going to be paying a price for this business, and how dependable, how predictable, how much confidence do I have that this business will continue to prosper and thrive even when the owner leaves. And so the answer to the question is, what can you do as a business owner to ensure that when someone's doing their due diligence, that they appreciate that the business they're about to buy is going to, if anything, continue to thrive and in fact do better once you, the business owner, is left. So that's part one of that. Part two of that is, they're buying a future revenue stream, right? Your profitability. And so there's going to be lots of questions about, is that profitability likely to continue even in your absence, or how predictable, how much confidence can the new buyer have in acquiring your business? So they're assessing risk. So that's the short answer to your question.
Okay, and so I guess maybe just to expand on that a little bit. So what does that look like to assess that?
Well, one of the things that your listeners might like to do is to think about something called the value builder system. So if anybody's interested, we can talk about the details of that afterwards. But sure. A guy named John Nieuwenburg, who's a Canadian, wrote a book called Built to Sell. And this book is in part a bit about his experience of having an agency and learning that that agency wasn't as valuable as he thought it was when he was about to sell it. And it's kind of done in a metaphor, allegory kind of style, where he goes and sees a mentor, and that mentor teaches him the 8 things that he needs to do in order to optimize his business for sale. So that book is available. Amazon will deliver to you tomorrow. Built to Sell, John Nieuwenburg. He's taken it a step further and built out a program called the Value Builder System, which advisors like me and others throughout the country and throughout the world actually are working with business owners to help optimize their business for sale. So there's a quick assessment that you can do. It's about 13 minutes, and at the end of which you'll arrive at a score. We've done about 25,000 of these. And on average, most businesses fall in the range of about a score of 50. It's an arbitrary number, but let me just say 25,000 times, that's a pretty good solid base of data. And on average, owners are reporting that when their business is scoring about 50, they get, on average, an offer of 3 times pre-tax profit. So if your business is doing 500,000 in pre-tax profit, that business is likely going to attract an offer of $1.5 million, depending on a bunch of variables, and I'm going to talk about that in a minute.
Yeah.
That same business, if they can drive the score up to 80 using that same assessment, those businesses on average get an offer of about 6 times pre-tax profit, or nearly double the price, or your $1.5 million price goes up to about $3 million.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a sizable opportunity that's in front of you as you think about optimizing your business. So how long does it take to do? It takes about a year to optimize, to put into place all of the strategies, to put them all in place so that you've optimized your business. And then at least another year, and 2 is better, to prove out that the results are genuine, that you've got a track record, and that the 3 years of audited financial results are then proof positive that your buyer can make an offer with a high level of confidence that that offer is based on real numbers.
Okay, so what are a couple of examples that integrate into their business to create more value?
So one of which is customer score. So there's a thing called the Net Promoter Score. A Bain's consultant, Fred Reichelt, did a study that where he got increasingly dissatisfied about the relationship between companies that had high customer satisfaction scores and profitability. And he ultimately came out with a discovery that there was one particular process that had a high correlation between future profitability of a company and customer satisfaction. And it's an answer to a really simple question. So, Joe, on a scale of 1 to 10, how likely are you to refer us to a friend or colleague, our business to a friend or colleague? And the way the Net Promoter Score works is that anybody who scores you as an 8 and a 7 are considered neutral. 9s and 10s are promoters, and 6s and belows are detractors. And so, if 1 month you did a survey of 100, and 20 were promoters, and 60 were neutrals, and 20 were detractors, well, your score that month is 20 less 20. The ones in the middle don't count, and your score is 0. The best performing companies, the Apples of the world, the Costcos of the world, are regularly scoring in the 70s and 80s. So think about that. What that means is, the vast majority of their clients are giving them a score of 9 or 10 or higher. So a buyer looking at your company is going to want to know, are the customers of this company satisfied? Are they happy? Are they likely to continue to do business? And the acid test of that is, are these customers willing to refer and put their own reputation on the line, refer that business to their friends and colleagues? So that's an example of one of the things that you'd want to be able to report on as a owner. You'd want to be able to report on a record, a series of data points, 3 years worth of records that says my clients continue to be happy with me, and in fact, over the last 3 years, their happiness has increased. So that's one of the strategies that you'd want to implement in the business, is the customer score. You asked me for a couple of examples. Another one might be something that we call the Switzerland structure, and that's from the notion that Switzerland prizes independence above all else. And so what this one module assesses is the degree to which you're dependent on a particular supplier, a customer, or a team member or an employee. So as a general rule, if you have a customer that is more than 30% of your business, a single customer, you're at greater risk. If something were to ever happen with that customer, 30% of your business could walk out the door. And so that's something that a buyer is very concerned about. Whereas, if you've got 100 customers and no one of those customers represents more than 10% of your business, then even if 5 of those customers were to leave, that wouldn't have a major impact on your business, even if it was the 5 represented, 10% of your business. If you've got a key employee, so some companies have a key salesperson, as an example, that might be, doing 50% of your business is through one salesperson. Well, imagine the risk and what happens if, for any reason, that salesperson were to leave your company. And, at a time of transaction through the period of sale, you'd be way better off if your company sales were spread out over 5 people as opposed to 1. But as a buyer is thinking about your business, they're thinking, well, what do I got to do to make sure that guy stays with me as I and that often leads to, some challenging kinds of conversations. So, and of course, if you're dependent on one supplier, 50% of what you need in order to produce or sell what you do comes from one supplier, well then, if something changes in the nature of that relationship, so does your business. And so independence or options or with respect to your suppliers, your customers, and your team members is something that you'd want to optimize through the lens of a particular buyer. So those are a couple examples. There's 12 modules that we would work through in the course of a year, and I've just described 2 of them.
Well, you've given some really good examples of things to take into consideration, and so what are some things that they might be able to trying to implement? It sounds like we're looking at 2 to 3 years as sort of getting everything in place to really develop something that's building value and getting ready to sort of make that transition. So over the next, say, 2 to 3 years, like just to mention doing the survey, what are some of the other things they could do, I guess, to be trying to build more value into the company before putting it up for sale?
Yeah, so another example of something that you'd want to work on is, to what degree is your financial reporting robust? And so if you're getting, simply your bookkeeper to produce a P&L at the end of the year, and you use that for the purposes of filing your taxes, that isn't a very robust financial system, and it isn't, it wouldn't necessarily pass the smell test. And so having audited financial reporting by an outside third party, hopefully one of the big 4 accountants, lends an awful lot of credence, awful lot of credibility to the financial results you're reporting. Number 2 is, are you getting regular reporting, or does your business produce something that looks like the dashboard, scoreboard of your business on a regular weekly and monthly basis that rolls up into an annual plan, so that on any given week you've got data that's really reliable and robust about the health of the business going forward? If all you're getting is financials once a year from your bookkeeper, well, those, that business doesn't have a very solid reporting system, and it's a little like trying to fly an airplane without having a dashboard in front of you. That that isn't that doesn't inspire a lot of confidence. So one of the things, coming back to your question, is to institute a great KPI dashboard reporting system along with robust financials.
Okay, so that would, and that would help me sort of figure out how to, where I'm at on the scale as far as, what the value of my business is, right? Yeah.
So the value builder assessment would give you a kind of a rule of thumb, so to speak, report on what your business currently, an estimate of value, and it would then also give you an estimate of what's available to you in terms of incremental value if you were to, take on this a strategy of optimizing your business for the purpose of preparing it for sale. It's a little like, when you want to go and sell a house, wouldn't you then want to dress it up and prepare it so that it looks at its very, very best? Stage your home, that's the expression I was looking. We often go out and hire a stager to make our home look like a model home, so that the buyer sees it in its best possible light. Well, the business version of that is in our case, the value builder system.
Okay. Yeah, like for example, I have 2 clients actually that would be really good case studies. The one client I have, he's well into his late 70s. He owns a travel agency. He has, I think, about seven travel agents working for him. And he's really, he's in there probably, maybe 2 to 3 days a week, depending what time of year it is.
Yeah.
But I get the sense that, he's hasn't really considered an exit strategy per se as to how he can build more value into his business.
Yeah, let's come back to your original question, is what does an owner need to consider before putting their business for sale? So one of the 2 primary things is this process of optimizing, staging your business, if I was to go back to, that selling your house metaphor. But the other one that's just as important is many business owners aren't prepared emotionally and psychologically in what it means to sell their business. Many business owners have worked in their business for decades, and the actual act of selling the business and sort of losing their sense of identity and sense of purpose and sense of who they are is a very traumatic kind of experience. And it often happens that owners get to a place where they prepare the business, they start thinking about putting it for sale, and then they kind of back off, they get cold feet because they haven't really mentally prepared themselves for what's next. And so the other part of the process is to have a clear answer to the question of why are you selling the business and what is your go forward plan? Who are you going to become, or what is your next endeavor? Not necessarily, a new business. It could be retirement. It could be, but you need to be. You want to be very clear about the emotional kinds of things that happen as you think about stepping out of your business.
Okay. You were mentioning the sort of like the value builder method. So, I mean, I guess ideally those kinds of people they're probably boomers. They're going to be the business obviously mature, and it's just about trying to figure out how they can get more value from the business. Like I often wonder, just like for people who don't have, like their businesses don't really have any assets, like they basically have a book per se, that kind of thing. Like, what are you supposed to do about that?
Well, that's an interesting question. So one of the things that you might like to do if you want to hear some case studies is go to Built to Sell podcasts. There's about 108 of them, I think, and the last two, in fact, are very much on point. The last two are where John interviews the owners of businesses that were consulting businesses, where it was largely intellectual property. It was about a system and a process, and there wasn't really any assets. It was an asset sale, but there wasn't any inventory, there wasn't any equipment, there wasn't any real estate. It was just simply intellectual property, and that business sold for a very healthy number. And so and in fact, John's lesson is he had a business that was an agency style business that he had to work through some things in order to optimize that business from strictly a kind of a intellectual property kind of business to a business that had value in the marketplace.
It seems like as I talk to more people who basically have a digital business like myself, or they have a business that doesn't really generate any inventory or those kinds of assets, and they're simply thinking, oh, well, I have nothing to sell, so I'm just going to shut it down. And I'm thinking, wait a minute, you don't put 25 years of your life into something just to turn around and shut it down, right?
Yeah. So one of the strategies is one of the risks of the kind of bit like a digital business is that you sell too many things to not enough people. And so, we get into a kind of a trap where someone says, well, would you do a website? Sure. Would you do some SEO? Sure. Would you do some social media marketing? And we're doing a bunch of different things. Yeah. And that very, very much depends on your individual enterprise. If you can convert that into what's called productizing your product, which is a strategy that converts selling your service into what looks like a product. Services are hard to sell, and those businesses are hard to buy, but we're all very good at buying products. We can all go to a grocery store or a department store or a clothing store, and we can buy the things off the shelf. And so the strategy that you'd want to implement into your business is productizing your service. And in fact, in the Built to Sell example, they went from being a broad-based agency to they narrowed down their offering to one single thing. All they did is logos. You wanted a logo, we can do logos, but we don't do anything else. And so they became the go-to place to get a logo, and they had a system for it and a process, and it was easily duplicable. It was easy to market and sell. It had a perfect niche in the marketplace, and they sold logos for 10 grand a piece. And that, converted that agency with a broad spectrum of selling anything to anyone into something that had a very targeted and therefore an easy to understand kind of business.
Wow.
Productizing your service.
What are some things that people should consider just before they make that next step?
Well, you want to get professional help. This is a complicated process, and there's lots of pitfalls and traps in the way. And so you want to get someone to help you through the process, either a business broker or an M&A professional, depending on the size of your business. You want someone to give you the highest quality advice that you can get. So before you're ready to sell a business, make sure, going back to the house example, you can get a realtor just by opening up Google and doing a search for realtor, and you'll get 1,000 replies to that. But how do you know that which one is the right one? So my point here is that before you get ready to sell your business, do some due diligence and get comfortable with an advisory team, a lawyer, an accountant, a financial planner to help you with the proceeds. But the first in that process is a business broker or an M&A professional to help you guide through the process. And one of the first steps they'll do is in helping you evaluate the business and establishing what its value is. But they also go and analyze who are the best possible buyers for your business, and they'll work out a kind of a short list. They'll work out a data set of who they'll be approaching on your behalf to promote your business as an entity that they ought to be thinking about acquiring.
And
so get help is the answer.
Yeah, exactly, right. And then that'll at least hopefully help you get the top dollar for your business, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then hopefully. And again, it comes back to the accounting thing. Just because I remember years ago, a friend of mine sold his business and they didn't set up the tax situation right, and they paid way too much in taxes. They didn't set it up properly, right?
Yeah, and that's a fine example. That's so I was thinking I expressed it in the form of financial planner or an accountant who optimizes your financial transaction to put you in the best possible stead in terms of taxation and estate planning and all the other things to think about.
Yeah. Great. Well, I know you have another call you have to hop on to. I want to thank you for being on with me today. So if someone wants to get a hold of you, John, what is the best way to do that?
Well, you can go to my website. If you peek over my shoulder, it's W5 Coaching. It's the name of my firm. So W5coaching.com, or you can send me an email, john@W5coaching.com. W5 refers to the 5 W's: who, what, when, where, why. And that's a philosophy about coaching that says that the best way to help a client is to help them figure out the answer for themselves that's right for them. And the best way to do that is by guiding them, taking them through a process that helps them uncover the right answer. And the best way to do that is ask the right questions. And of course, the core, of all questions start with a W. So that's a little bit of the backstory.
Perfect. So my final question to you is, and this is my signature question to everyone, is so what is your best wine recommendation?
What I've learned to do in the last 3 months or so is I find the best value in the wine store these days are in Spain or France, believe it or not. US and Australia and so forth have gotten really expensive. And apart from asking a wine consultant, if one isn't available, what I've discovered is there's a wine writer whose name is Robert Parker. Mm-hmm. And many wines have his medallion on the label that, Robert Parker has scored this wine as a 92. So I've been shopping by label and been thrilled with the results that I'm getting. So I buy any wine from France or Spain that's been, given the stamp by Robert Parker.
All right. That's a great wine tip. So thanks again, John, for being on.